Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with another discussion video. Yes, indeed. We're back with a campaign battle, just as cinematic here. This is a battle from my recent Chaos campaign I've been playing privately. And yeah, it's just here to provide a backdrop as we discuss some things. I'm going to be talking today about the old world factions and how I think they could be updated. We're going to be rehashing a few things here. I have made a couple of videos about this before, but you guys have been requesting it. So this is what I think we're going to see next. Now that we've got the Charybdis out, we can kind of talk about what's coming. In terms of new content, I've already talked a bit about, I believe, Creative Assembly has confirmed they're doing another faction DLC, another campaign pack, they're calling it, which is going to be a new faction. So we'll see exactly what that entails. Their last campaign pack was the Tomb Kings, had 4 full legendary lords, and my guess is it's going to be probably the Southern Realms. I think that's the most likely, kind of a Southern Realms Dogs of War hybrid, or maybe Vampire Coast, although I think that's fairly unlikely. We'll have to wait and see. But anyway, we're here to talk about the old world factions, and let's start with the guys currently charging in here, the Wood Elves. These Wild Riders looking very cool. The Wood Elves need some love. They're very good in multiplayer, one of the strongest multiplayer factions, even if I'm not the biggest fan of their playstyle. There's no getting around that. In campaign, it's an entirely different story, though. They seem very dated. Their occupation system, in terms of how they occupy territories, is, you know, it was designed for a system that no longer exists. Just in general, they feel a little clunky, and so I definitely think a campaign rework is in order. They need to, I think they could do a few things with it, giving a more diplomatic focus, so you have more benefits from not just conquering the whole map. You can maybe get more amber from being diplomatic, I think would definitely be helpful. I would personally love to see, and this would be a lot more work for Creative Assembly, but I would love to see some narrative battles where maybe you have a dilemma that pops up and you can say, okay, I want to side with Alariel, or I want to fight Alariel, and then you fight a quest battle, and then depending on the outcome of that quest battle, you either get a bonus or penalty to diplomatic relations with Alariel. I'm just using her as an example, but you could have it be the Empire, you know, various other factions, so that you can go around and interact with them on the campaign map without necessarily going to war with them or allying with them directly, and maybe it can help you in either of those aims if you want to accomplish that. But just kind of spitballing here. The point is the Wood Elves, that is, need a campaign rework. In terms of new content for them, the only thing I really think they need is more legendary lords. I'm not super familiar with the Wood Elf lore, so sorry I didn't get a lot of time to do research before this, but they only have Durthu and Orion right now, so it's a little bit unfortunate in terms of their lord selection. There are some twins for the Wood Elf lore, I think, who would probably be good candidates just because they would kind of give you a 2-for-1. It would be cool to have a co-op focused campaign where you could play as both of them in co-op and have benefits to each other, similar to almost like a Vlad and Isabella, although they don't have separate start positions, so I don't think you can even play them co-op. But anyway, it would be cool to have separate start positions, a campaign that's maybe focused more around co-op. You obviously would have to work single player still, but I think that'd be a good candidate for Legendary Lord for the Wood Elves. That's pretty much it for them. Moving on to the Empire, who got some buffs in the recent patch. The change to Hold the Line was definitely welcome, although I still don't think it's quite enough. I think Hold the Line maybe needs to be +7 or +10 melee defense, but it's something, you know, it's definitely a step in the right direction. Flagellants, Halberdiers could maybe be a little bit cheaper. Flagellants, I think 575 would be a good price point. It's only 25 cheaper than they are right now. They definitely got better in the last patch with their HP buff, but I do think they could be slightly cheaper to be more cost effective. Likewise, Halberdiers, I think definitely could be a bit cheaper. I think 600 would be a better price point for them. Reduce their cost by 50, and they would definitely start to shine a bit more. So let's actually go to the custom battle screen and talk about some things. So we're talking about the Empire currently, which is over here. So yeah, Halberdiers, make them a bit cheaper. I think they'd be a bit more cost effective. In terms of campaign mechanics, I would love to see a diplomacy system for the Empire. So some kind of system where you interact with the different elector counts, and maybe it's a system similar to Alariel's, where if there's territories that are held by non-Empire factions or that are in ruins, maybe you get a diplomatic penalty, and maybe once all those territories are held, you get a diplomatic bonus. maybe make it on like a province by province basis. I don't know if that would have to be a lot more work, but maybe then if Nordland gets destroyed, Ostland might not care that much. They're going to be a little bit worried, but they're more concerned about Ostland's territory. But if Ostland starts to lose territory, then they'll get maybe some severe diplomatic penalties. So it's kind of you propping up these different elector counts and give you some sort of bonus towards confederation rather than civil war. Because I definitely think that the Empire should be a diplomacy type faction, similar to the High Elves. So I'd love to see a diplomacy system for the Empire in terms of their campaign. And in terms of when I see these updates coming out, I'm not really sure. The Wood Elves I can't really give a timetable for. They're a DLC faction, so, it's tough to say. The Empire, if the next DLC is Southern Realms, which I think it likely will be, it would make sense to update the Empire alongside them. Another thing I would love to see is playable Boris. Midland as a separate start position. Start positions in general seems to be an issue for the Empire. You could maybe throw Balthazar off somewhere doing some studies like they did with Teclis. But a playable Midland would be awesome. I know some people want some unique units for Midland. I think that might be a little bit outside the scope. Maybe 1 or 2 unique units might work out, but they would also need to be playable in the overall Empire roster, so they wouldn't necessarily be unique to Midland. But Knights of the White Wolf are the main one I could see as maybe kind of a mid-tier AP cav, so maybe they fit in between Empire Knights and Reichsguard in terms of cost. Maybe they're 950 to 1,000, and they don't have the best stats, maybe they don't have the best armor, but they do AP. I mean, obviously they shouldn't be as good as Demigryph Knights, but they could definitely find a role for them. But in terms of a Midland-focused unit, I think that would be the easiest for them to implement and also would make sense thematically. Maybe the Knights Panther as well. I know the Knights Panther chapter house is already in the campaign, so, it would make sense to add them into the campaign as well. The Knights of the White Wolf would probably be recruitable from the Temple of, what's it called? Ulrich, that's in Midland. But maybe you could have, because Midland doesn't have access to Reichsguard, maybe you make Knights Panther just like a reskinned Reichsguard, basically, for Midland to use as the same role, basically, so that they're not lacking that unit. But again, just kind of spitballing here a little bit. Moving on to the Greenskins. The Greenskins, in terms of their campaign mechanics, it'd be cool to see, again, a more, I hate to say diplomacy-focused way to play the Greenskins, but the way I see it working is the more WAs you get, you should get a more diplomatic bonus to the other Greenskins factions. I think that'd be a cool way to implement a diplomacy system with Greenskins, because the way I see it is like the other war bosses see you getting into this big WA, building up power and getting all angry, and they want to come join you, right? Because they want to be a part of your big WA that's going on. And also have a great time. So maybe the more WAs you generate in the campaign map, you gain diplomatic bonuses to other Greenskin factions for each one you have, and so as you start to build them up in the late game especially, you can just very quickly ally with Greenskin factions you come across, pick them up in your WA, bring them into the fold. I think that'd be a super cool way to fine-tune the Greenskins campaign mechanics. Honestly, they don't need a lot of other love besides that in terms of their campaign. Their lords, on the other hand, Grimgor needs some love. Grimgor is just sad sack droopy drawers, just the worst. The first issue is his HP. Let me just do a quick comparison. Archaon the Everchosen has more HP on foot than Grimgor does. So if you look, Grimgor has 3,800, Archaon has 4,300. There are also a number of Dwarf Lords who have more HP than Grimgor. So in general, I think Grimgor should probably have the most HP out of any infantry lord. I mean, he's huge, and he's an absolute meatbag, so he should have probably close to like 55 maybe or more. That might be a bit too much, maybe like 4,800 HP, but the point is he needs more HP. I would also love to see him have an anti-large bonus and another cool self-buff ability. Like maybe you have an ability that gives him more AP. Heck, just give him Heroic Killing Blow, maybe. I know he didn't necessarily have that in the tabletop, at least I don't think he did. I didn't play the tabletop, so I couldn't tell you firsthand, but I think an ability like that to buff himself up to make him a little meaner would be great, and to give him more HP to make him tankier would be great. An anti-large bonus as well, just to make him that much more focused at taking down big things, you know, trading above his weight class. Another thing I think would help to give him a huge splash attack, like seriously give him like 5 or 6 or more splash attack targets so that he can just cleave through infantry. Like I feel like you should be able to throw in Grimgor against a unit of, say, like great swords, or, you know, even like sword masters of Hoeth, and he should just be able to carve them to pieces because he's that much of a just monster in melee. So yeah, I could see Grimgor definitely getting some buffs. The other one is Skarsnik. Skarsnik is not that great. I would love to see him get either stock or Vanguard or both. Both is probably asking for a lot, but Vanguard would allow him to go full Vanguard with your Gabo army, which is something that's quite viable in a number of matchups, and it would give you an alternative to using the Gabo Great Shaman, who is currently the only Greenskin Lord that can Vanguard if you put him on the Wolf. We'll come back to this guy in a minute, but Skarsnik needs Vanguard. Stock would be an added bonus. I mean, obviously he has Tricksy Traps to give himself stock and area of effect around him as well, but it would be nice if he just had it baseline. The other thing I think Skarsnik needs is a lot of melee defense. His melee defense is just very poor overall. I see him being more like Tretch, where he has like 70 plus melee defense, so he's really hard to take down, very kind of sneaky in that way. I mean, obviously he doesn't have a lot of armor. You know, his HP, he does have more than Grimgor. I mean, obviously it's him and Gobla, but yeah, I think that would be the way you could buff up Skarsnik. Give him more melee defense and stock and or Vanguard. Vanguard preferably, stock would just be an added bonus. The only other one I have something to say about here is the Gabo Great Shaman. We need an Ragnarok mount for this buddy here, and it's something from the tabletop, and I don't think that's something that would be super hard for a creative assembly to implement, so yeah, let's get into Ragnarok for the Gabo Great Shaman, because number one, that would be awesome. I don't think it would be super game breaking, as there are already caster lords who can ride big monsters, and the Gabo Great Shaman, it's not like he's a powerhouse to begin with. Lore of Little Waz, okay, but it's not amazing. But having him have a Ragnarok mount would be awesome. It would allow you to go full spider build, and it would just be super cool, and might actually be viable in certain matchups. I would also love to see an Orc melee hero. The Greenskins on the tabletop had more characters than any other faction, and in Total War Warhammer they have only 3 heroes, whereas other factions have a lot more hero types. Part of that is only because they only have the 2 Lords of Magic, but I would love to see an Orc melee hero somewhere in the area of, you know, 1,000 to 1,100, who would have maybe anti-large AP. I know some of you guys are going to say that's copy-paste of a lot of other melee heroes in the game, but I honestly think that it's a necessary role for most factions to have, and Greenskins have a plethora of melee characters to choose from. I mean, you could make it a Black Orc. I would personally would like a Black Orc boss, a Savage Orc boss. I mean, every type of Orc and Goblin has its own character choice, so whatever you can think of. It could just be an plain old Orc boss, but I would love to see personally a Black Orc boss with a big sticka, and maybe he could also ride a boar as a mount option. You know, just some thoughts. But yeah, in terms of their units, I do think that Orc Boys with spears and Black Orcs with shields, I'm going to keep harping about these guys until they get added, but there's things that, again, in the tabletop, the Greenskins had a ton of weapon variations, way too many to implement in the game. I get that. But I think we could use a few more weapon variations. Orc Boys with spears would give them a cheap anti-large option, which they currently lack, and Black Orcs with shields would give them a high-tier defensive, I say that in air quotes, you know, as defensive as Orcs can be, option, which is very necessary, especially because in Total War Warhammer 2, we've seen kind of a proliferation of elite tier missile units that can do a devastating amount of damage with small arms fire. So Black Orcs with shields would be a very good pick against like High Elves, Wood Elves, even Dark Elves. Because you have a lot of options for armor sundering, you don't necessarily always need to take the great weapons. Now, obviously, you would take the great weapons in certain matchups, but still, I think Black Orcs with shields, again, wouldn't break the game. Seems fairly in line with what they could add, and I think would be a very welcome addition to the greenskins. I think that's pretty much it. The greenskins have the most in terms of lords, heroes, and units that I want added and changed, but the new WA change is awesome. 10 out of 10 CA on that. Big props to whoever came up with that change. It's super cool. I love the animation and the mechanic. It's made the greenskins quite a bit stronger, I think, and they're actually moving up in the tier list in a lot of people's eyes. You know, now that people are kind of starting to figure out the tactics a little bit more with it. But anyway, moving on to the next one here. We've only got a couple left to talk about, and they're going to be relatively quick. The Beastmen. They need just one more legendary lord, I think. I would love to see the Brass Bull added to the game. It's a cool legendary lord that sticks out in my mind from the lore, which is not super common. I don't often remember characters from the lore super well, but the Brass Bull is one that's super unique and would be awesome. We need a Minotaur lord, so the Brass Bull could fill that role. A generic Doom Bull would also be awesome as well. You know, just a generic Minotaur character, Minotaur lord character, that is. And yeah, in terms of units, maybe they could add the Gorgon. I mean, you could use a one-eyed giant, maybe. You could use similar animations as the giant. Maybe they could recycle some skeleton and stuff there. I'm not really sure, but the Gorgon is the one I see maybe being added. I still don't think the Jabberslythe is in the cards. Sorry, folks, but it's just a little bit too much to implement. That's it for the Beastmen, though. Just a few things there. The Beastmen are honestly in a pretty solid place. The campaign, I don't really have a lot to say. They pretty much play as intended in the campaign, more or less. You know, I haven't actually played a Beastmen campaign in quite some time, so might have to go back and play one to see if there are any issues. But for the most part, they seem pretty decent. Moving on, the last one I have to talk about today is the Vampire Counts. So the Vampires already have the most lords of any in the game, but they don't have all the bloodlines they need, so it's a little bit strange. I'm thinking, you know, we need more bloodlines, but I don't necessarily want to just lump more characters into the Vampire Counts roster because they already have the most characters out of anyone, lord choices, that is, out of anyone in the game. So maybe they add the bloodlines as separate factions. Again, this kind of brings us back to the Vampire Coast a little bit. I just don't see them getting 4 legendary lords out of Vampire Coast unless they did like a larger... what is Harkon part of? Blood Dragon, I think he is. Blood Dragon bloodline. Like maybe you make the Red Duke playable and flesh him out a little bit more, and maybe implement some other Blood Dragons as part of the Vampire Coast. But I just don't see that. But I mean, I guess because the Vampire Counts roster itself is so bloated in terms of lord choices, I really don't see them adding more to this faction itself. So I guess they would have to come up with new factions to add more bloodlines, but that's really the only thing I have to say about the vampires, is that they need more of their bloodlines represented. I mean, we have the one blood dragon in the Red Duke, we have a Strigoi Ghoul King, we don't have any Neckarchs, I don't think, so it would be cool to get a Neckarch Lord maybe, but not a lot else. I mean, there are a handful of missing units here or there for the vampires, like Spirit Host, but they don't really... I mean, a lowish tier ethereal unit, which probably wouldn't cause terror. How useful would that actually be when ethereal units, I find, are diminishing in their usefulness by successive patches, because more and more factions are getting access to different ways of dealing magic damage. So ethereal units are diminishing in their effectiveness quite a bit, I think. But that's pretty much it for the old world factions. Chaos I'm going to punt on because we're expecting them to get a rework with Game 3, so I'm not even going to talk about them right now. But let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. A little bit of speculation, a little bit of theory crafting here, and a little bit of, I guess, suggestion. I don't know if anyone from Creative Assembly will actually watch this video, but if you do, these are my thoughts. This is what I think you guys should add to the game. And you guys down in the comments, let's get a discussion going, just so in case if anyone from Creative Assembly does watch this and happens to glance at the comments section, maybe they can see a constructive discussion happening down there as well. So let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this discussion video. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button, so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thank you once again for watching, and we'll see you next time.